Another brother with the same Clifton name. You know, I don't meet too many Cliftons.
Oh, you're a Clifton as well?
I am a Clifton, not a Clifford.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I don't meet many Cliftons either. I thought it was just me, my dad, and my grandfather at one point.
Oh, are you the third? I am the third as well.
Oh, really? Yeah, I'm the third.
Wow. We are like almost almost the same.
Yeah.
How are you doing on this wonderful LA evening?
Oh, I'm doing all right. You know, just getting ready for a rehearsal and planning out my next set of gigs.
Awesome. Well, you stay busy like James Brown. You're the hardest working man in LA for sure.
I try to stay busy. I don't know if I'm the hardest working man, but it feels like I'm one of them.
Definitely. Well, you got to hustle. The hustle is always on. Never take the vacation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it should be pretty easy breezy. We're doing this for the 88.5 at home interviews and the Deeper Grooves podcast. So super excited to have you on and to be able to chat about your illustrious career. Just super excited as a fan to really nerd out. And
thank you. I'm flattered.
And super excited. I mean, we're not going to talk about all 10,000 vinyl that you have, but we definitely will get into a little bit of it. But I wanted to see how you started into DJing. How did you get into DJing? And then how did you amass these 10,000 vinyls? And why deep cuts of funk and soul music?
Well, how I got into DJing, it was totally an accident. Kind of. Well, yeah, it was an accident. I wasn't really planning on being a DJ. I've always played in bands. And back around 2000, I was kind of like in this kind of modish, 60-ish garage rock band. And we had a residency at a club in Long Beach. And the first night of the residency, the promoter, who was also supposed to be the main DJ for the night, he didn't want to start DJing until he felt there was enough people inside the club. Because I don't know if it was because he didn't have enough records or if he just didn't want to be DJing to an empty room. But I noticed people would walk in, not hear music, walk out. Or sometimes people would walk in, look at the DJ booth, wouldn't see anyone in there, walk out. And since my band was playing and I wanted people to be there to see my band play, I asked them, I said, hey, since you don't want to DJ at the beginning of the night, would you mind if I brought records? And I'll play. I'll figure it out and I'll play just so that when people walk in, they'll see somebody in the DJ booth, hear music, and I'll make them more likely to stay. So yeah, that's how I got started. So we had a month-long residency, which kind of turned into us being the house band for the night because it was like a mod 60s night. So I just started bringing records, and I would do like the first hour or so of the night. And then when my band started getting a little more popular and we started playing in LA a lot more, a lot of the places that we would play at would offer a guest DJ slot to a band member. And at the time, I was the only member of the band that had any experience with turntables and mixers because of the club in Long Beach. So it always fell to me. And by the time that band ended, people were still asking me to DJ. So I just kept on DJing. I was DJing like house parties and little small mod 60s nights, and eventually got to do bigger and bigger soul clubs. And that was also kind of the reason why I kind of gravitate towards like the rare deep cuts as well, because the whole mod kind of 60s scene in LA at the time was very much about things being rare. And it was all about hearing stuff you had never heard before. So that was always what I gravitated towards. Even as a listener and a club goer, before I started DJing, I preferred going places where I was going to hear something I never heard before rather than stuff I could just hear on the radio.
That makes sense. Now there are different types of geographies, as you were saying, being from the LBC, from LA. How did that influence your musical upbringing and crate digging, in relation to, if you were from the East Coast in New York, or people in the UK that obviously love a lot of soul music, and people in Africa and South Africa and things like that? How would the West Coast kind of influence your experience?
Well, I think originally, like I said, coming from like more of a 60s mod and Northern soul background, those kind of scenes, even though, we're on the West Coast, we very much were all, it was very much trying to model itself and base itself on what was going on in the UK. So, to start with, it's one of the big influences I can remember soul-wise was a guy named Gabby, who was from the UK, and he had an organization in the 90s called the Golden State Soul Society. And he would throw these dances all around California. And in Long Beach, he would do them at the spot called the Foothill Club, which is gone now. I think it's like a public storage or something now. But there was a spot called the Foothill Club that he would do his soul dances at. And all the, sometimes he would have DJs come from the UK. If he ever did have live performances, it'd be like a rare soul artist, like, Brenda Holloway. I remember seeing Brenda Holloway one New Year's Eve. So that was the original influence, like that, what they were doing in the UK, the Northern Soul stuff. And then, he would have like a record bar, and record dealers would be selling rare records, and they'd have price guides out and everything. So that was like the original influence. And then as I kind of, but then like the Northern Soul scene here was slightly different from the mod scene, and the mod scene was slightly more, less about like the kind of like the four on the floor, Motownish Northern Soul, and more kind of like funky-ish kind of stuff. Lots of James Brown, Stax, Otis Redding, Sam and Dave kind of stuff, but still things that you didn't hear on the radio. And then as I gravitated more towards that sound also became a big influence. But still very much based on what was happening in the UK. The first main soul club I can remember that was like Long Beach based, that kind of had a little bit of both of those kind of things to it, but it had its very own unique original spin on everything, was a night called the Goodfoot in Long Beach. And I remember going to that, I think September of 98. So I think, they're coming up on their anniversary. And so that was like a lot more funk, heavy on the James Brown, late 60s into the 70s kind of sounds. And that was like a big influence. I can remember, I still go when I have a chance, but I remember going there and just being so excited to hear that kind of music, going there like maybe 10 minutes before the doors opened, and then dancing all night till like, the end of the night and the lights went up. So that was the first kind of West Coast night I can remember having a big influence. And then, things like Funky Soul. Before I was a DJ at Funky Soul, I would go there. And then that also led me to check out things like the Root Down, which made me realize, there's a whole other side to it that at the time I didn't realize. Because at the time, growing up, I didn't grow up around a lot of people that were into hip hop. So I'm kind of, that I came to that later in life. And, going to a night like the Root Down was part of that, because, I'm hearing like the soul music and the funk music that I love. But now you got like kind of more hip hop minded DJs, and like they're, scratching and beat juggling, and, and it's coming from a whole other kind of side of things, which was eye opening and also very influential. And I think, that's where I really start, or where I feel like, there's really more of a geographical influence, because now it's less of like a UK influence and more about just in general, like just soul music, funk music in general, and then also keeping certain types of crowds on the floor. Because with like Root Down, there's definitely much more of like a b-boy kind of presence. That and the way in which they played the records didn't lend itself to the way perhaps like Northern Soul or mod dancers would dance. So it's like a whole new way of approaching the same music.
Definitely. And so to piggyback back on that, how did you become a part of the legendary LA dance party Funky Soul, which you did for over 11 years first as a fan, then into DJing, and all kinds of different DJs have flowed through there, from the Garth Trinidads of the world and things like that. But what kind of led you into that and doing that for so long? And it was a really special thing from its earlier roots. When I saw it years ago at Star Shoes, all the way up to the Echo and Echoplex. How did that kind of come about?
Well, I originally met Miles through a mutual friend of ours at the Goodfoot. And then I really started going to Funky Soul in earnest. I think at the time it was at Star Shoes, and it wasn't on Saturdays. They were doing it on the second and fourth Fridays of every month at Star Shoes. And at that time, well, originally I used to go to a mod night called Cafe Blue that was on a Thursday. And there was problems with, even though there were non-racist skinheads would still start fights at mod nights. And so to kind of filter out the skinhead crowd, the people at Cafe Blue stopped playing soul music, which is what I really wanted to hear. I loved the Britpop and the indie rock and the 60s garage rock, but I really, really, really wanted to hear the soul music. And so that was on a Thursday night. So when they stopped playing soul music, I started going to the Root Down because Miles had told me about the Root Down. So I kind of got to know him, and I don't think I met Egon at the Root Down, but Egon was part of the Root Down at that time. So I would go to the Root Down, and then once Cafe Blue ended, there was another night that kind of took its place called Club Underground that I would go to, and they played like a tiny bit of soul, but not a ton. So I started going to Funky Soul on Fridays, which is how I really got to know Miles and Egon and kind of cut chemists from going to Funky Soul at Star Shoes all the time. So then when either Miles couldn't make it or Egon couldn't make it or somebody couldn't make it, they would ask me to do an opening set. And I didn't have like a ton of records at the time, but I kind of knew the sound. And so I would do like the first 30, 45 minutes until the other DJs could get there. And that's how it started. And then, and once I moved to Saturdays, that was it. That was my home. I was going there every week. And then when Star Shoes closed and Funky Soul moved, I think at the time Chemist dropped out because he was focusing on his career and touring and everything. So Miles and Egon asked me to be a resident to do like the opening sets every Saturday. And that's how it started. So yeah, we were at Jimmy's Lounge after Star Shoes. And that's where I made my debut as a Funky Soul DJ. And then I was a part of it from Jimmy's Lounge all the way up through 2017 at the Echo.
Wow, a long storied history. Now, beyond also DJing there, you have opened for Charles Bradley, rest in peace.
Yes.
Mayor Hawthorne.
Yes.
Adrian Young. Mm-hmm. Stone's Throw, Peanut Butter Wolf, who's an amazing DJ. And then as a member of the Love Grenades, you also opened for who I love, Janelle Monáe. So what was it like to rub shoulders with those greats and to perform and open and be accepted by and be on bills with them?
I mean, I still don't think it was me like having rubbed shoulders with them or, because to me, they're still idols and heroes. So it's, if I really sit down and think about it, it still feels kind of overwhelming and a little unreal. At the time it was happening, it's just my main concern was just like get to the gig on time and try not to screw up. So, just trying to stay focused on that. But I mean, obviously I feel very blessed and very fortunate, especially like in terms of like, artists like Charles Bradley, who I got to open up for twice. Once was actually through, so the Britpop night I mentioned, Club Underground, I was a member of that. And I think he had played, the Echo it was like one of the first times he had played over here on the West Coast, and the Echo had booked him before our night, Club Underground. And they knew that I also DJed at Funky Soul. So they asked if I would spin for his show, and then I could lead into the Club Underground thing. So that's the first time I saw him. And yeah, he was just, I mean, beyond just being an incredible performer, just an amazing, very genuine, caring human being. And then the second time I opened for him, it was at the Getty Museum. And him and his band, they remembered me from the Club Underground. He came up and he gave me a big hug. And yeah, that was just amazing to see. And then, at the time, I mean, I love that music. It still felt very underground at the time. It didn't feel like, it was, things hadn't gotten as big as they are now, with, the cover of Black Sabbath and, of course, with all the success that Sharon Jones had. So it still felt very much kind of like a scene, something a friend of mine had a saying, like, you felt like it fits in your pocket. It wasn't like this massive thing yet. And then, but when I did see it blow up, it was like, wow. I always saw, I just never knew if other people would see that kind of potential. So it was kind of like gratifying to see them get that kind of attention. And like I said, I'm still just kind of flattered and in disbelief that I got to see it when it was still, kind of small like that and really in your face and not like often on some arena stage or something.
Yeah, no, I agree. I remember like when John Legend was first coming up, like he was really small and he came and played like the House of Blues. Like now you'll never see him in a place that small. And I wish you could. It's nice to be, an early adopter of something that's dope. Same with Janelle Monáe. I think Janelle Monáe was like here playing like the Roxy or the little on the Rocks, like real tiny stuff. And now they're just so big.
But it was in Love Grenades. The main person in Love Grenades, her name was Liz White. And she has a project now called Pale Blue with Mike Simonetti from Italians Do It Better. But she was the main person. She had a PR person. I think her name was Versa, that was able to get us that show opening for Janelle Monáe. And it was her first record hadn't yet come out. And she was playing at the Viper Room. Mm-hmm. And that was incredible to watch her just and it's like, wow, she's going to be a star. And yeah, that was a pretty amazing time too. Amazing show.
Yeah, you can definitely feel that energy and see that star power, even if, you know, 5 people are in the room, that person is capturing your attention, or they got that X factor, and your group, I'm sure, had a energy and a vibe that made sense for that as well.
Oh yeah. Love Grenades was definitely kind of like more of like an indie dance kind of influence thing. I played bass just live. Liz basically did all the recordings on her own and with other musicians, but then I was part of the live band. But yeah, that was an amazing time, an amazing show to play, and yeah, she definitely had that thing. And yeah, you know, going back to Sharon Jones, I can remember hearing like that first Sharon Jones, the Dap Dipping record. Mm-hmm. I was so into that record. I carried it with me everywhere. I would go to friends' DJ nights and say, "You got to play this record. You got to put this record on," because yeah, just hearing it blew me away so much, and I couldn't believe that, you know, it was like a new group making sounds that sounded like that, kind of like authentic to like that 60s, 70s sound, and doing it in a way that wasn't kind of cheesy or like kind of cliched. And yeah, I was trying to get any and everyone I know to listen to it, because I was like, this is it. This is what we all need to listen to right now.
Yeah, it was crazy. I don't remember how I came into knowing them, but I remember I had Binky Riptides, like compilation something, and then I saw them at Amoeba, the old Amoeba, perform, and met Sharon and Neil and that whole group. And yeah, that was even, I think, before they had done the stuff with Amy Winehouse on Back to Black. But yeah, I mean, they're always just such good musicians. And that's a good segue and pivot, because I wanted to understand, do you consider yourself a funk soul purist? And when I say purist, I mean similar to a jazz purist. So a jazz purist, you have like the Marsalis brothers, and then you have kind of like hybrids and people that have branched out who can do all styles, like a Herbie Hancock, you know, but rock it is definitely not as jazz. It's like his bebop stuff. So it's like, and there's schools of thought around both, but would that be an accurate assessment of your refined taste? Are you persnickety purveyor of the pulse of this kind of music, the rare stuff, or do you kind of enjoy the gambit of it?
No, I definitely, I mean, I don't think of myself as a purist at all, because I've DJ'd a lot of different types of nights, and I collect a lot of different types of music. So in that sense, I'm not a purist. It's not the only thing I listen to. But at the same time, you know, if I were to say something was funk, you know, I feel like have kind of rigid definitions, maybe, yeah, of like what is funk, what is soul. You know, because to my mind, like that raw, like late 60s to mid 70s funk sound, that to me is funk. And I know, you know, more recently people have taken to calling more 80s influenced stuff funk. And I do consider that funk as well. But I you know, like a subgenre like boogie funk or disco funk or something like that, you know, raw funk to me is always like going to be like 68 to 74. So in that sense, I guess I kind of am a purist. But I enjoy a wide range of music. You know, I've done garage rock, like I said, Northern soul, Britpop. I've done indie rock nights. I've done punk rock nights. I've, you know, reggae. I've even played at a country night once before. So because I do enjoy some country music. So yeah, I'm not like a musical purist like that. No.
Awesome. Have you heard the what is that called? I think it's called Country Funk. The Volumes by Light in the Attic.
Yes. There's a great song, Dennis the Fox Pile Driver. That I love that song.
yeah, that's got some great stuff on there. I think even the Dolly Parton stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I got that. Just last year, like in the middle when the pandemic first hit, I had gotten like that the Bob Dylan record, Commitment. It has like light blue and all his great country funk stuff.
Yeah, it's cool to get some of those cool cuts. Now, besides funky soul, you've had gigs at Club Transistor, Club Underground, taking it on the road to Sweater Funk, which is huge in SF, and you've done stuff in New York and New Mexico. You also just did a huge Grand Park performance as well, correct?
Yes. This past Sunday was a Sunday session. That was amazing. Yeah, that was like a huge crowd and a young crowd too, because I was really nervous. I was like, I hope they get this, because I had gone to the previous one and it was very much, you know, contemporary 4 on the floor, kind of like house sounds. And I was like, I really hope this crowd can understand the connections and how, soul and funk and disco relates to it all. And they did. It was great. Yeah, huge crowd that danced all day. All the DJs were amazing. And it was just, a very, very satisfying and gratifying day. Felt very fortunate.
That's very cool. Is there any like one gig that takes the cake over another, or something that really stands out in your mind? It's like, oh, that was like the pinnacle, or are you still reaching for that?
I mean, there's been a few. I mean, when I was part of Funky Soul, we had DJ'd Santa Monica Pier opening for Maceo Parker, which was amazing. There's been times, some of the Getty gigs I've done where after the gig, and I was just supposed to be playing for 15, 20 minutes after the band finished, and it ended up going a little bit longer because the crowd stayed and the whole crowd was dancing. So it's just like you look out that whole kind of like Getty courtyard and it's this wall-to-wall people dancing. Yeah, that was definitely felt like a peak kind of moment where, you really kind of connect with all those people and you kind of get all those people all on the same page, and you're like one with the crowd. So there's been a few moments like that, probably, over the years. I mean, at least 6 or 7 every year that I DJ. I feel like I have like one of those kind of peak moments where, wow, we're all really connected and locked in on the same kind of wavelength. And then, when that happens too, that's when you can really kind of like stretch out and, play things that are even a little bit further out. Like I'm also like a really big fan of like, Afrobeat and Afro-funk stuff. And then, any kind of music from any other region of the world that's, you can hear like a heavy funk influence in it. I love that. And sometimes it can be really hard to kind of get that over with a crowd. But once you do get them to that point where everyone's on that same level and you're all having kind of like that same peak experience, then you can really play stuff like that. And then people get it. And then that's always a very satisfying kind of feeling.
Awesome. So then with that, since you've been doing a lot of DJing, but you do also play music in bands, do you have a preference of one over the other, or are they just different mediums, different expressions?
To me, they feel like different mediums and different expressions. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I love them both kind of equally. I mean, like I said, I got into DJing by mistake, but at this point I could never see myself not DJing, And, but yeah, they're to me, they're different because like with the band, with playing in a band, you're trying to lock in and connect with the members of your band. And then as a unit, lock in and connect with the audience. So that's a whole other kind of dynamic from just, playing, trying to create that kind of sense of unity with playing records. And the fact that usually with a band, it's like original music as well. So that in some cases can make it more difficult, more challenging. And at the same time, there's a different type of satisfaction with that when you're expressing your own personal feelings through your own music. And then, people connect with that. It's different from, when you're expressing your musical taste through records.
I definitely understand that. So because you have 10,000 plus vinyls and been collecting.
That's just a rough estimate. I don't know if it's actually that, but
a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
More than the average person, I would say. If you were on a desert island and you could only take a record player and five vinyls from your collection, what's the top 5? What would you take?
Oh man. It changes all the time. I think right now, and this, not all this is super rare either. Definitely Dap Dip and Sharon Jones and Dap Kings. Stevie Wonder, Inner Visions. Not a funk or a soul group, but one of my all-time favorite groups. Arthur Lee and Love, Forever Changes. Then a 60s mod group from the UK, Small Faces, would take their record, their first Immediate record. It's just called Small Faces on Immediate Records. And then John Coltrane, Blue Train on Blue Note Records.
Okay, that's a good mix. You got some jazz, you got some rare soul, you got some anomalies just to change it up a bit. So I think that's good. And it's really tough. It's a trick question because obviously you want to take all of them. You want to maybe grab them.
It'd be a struggle just to take 100.
Yeah, it's and it does change, and it's difficult. So part of all of my interviews that I do, I like to ask people, now that you're further up the road, if you were going to give one key piece of advice to someone who's an up and comer, you 15, 20 years ago, what would you tell him or her about getting into the music business, whether on the DJ side or the playing side, or just being an enthusiast of music and collecting? Like, what advice would you give them?
Well, I mean, in terms of DJing and DJing and being in a band, the advice would be the same. Like a long time ago, a friend of mine that was a promoter, and that used and she worked for Gold. I think she still does work for Golden Voice, and she had helped create the Coachella Festival. But she used to book my first band a lot, and I remember she gave me a piece of advice once, or she said something once that really stuck with me. She said that she always liked working with us because we always showed up on time, and we were easy to work with. We weren't we weren't unnecessarily difficult. It wasn't that we were pushovers, but we weren't unnecessarily difficult, because some people I've noticed can be unnecessarily difficult because they think that's the way to kind of assert themselves. And she said that goes further than talent or anything else. So if you're competent and you show up on time, and you do the job, and you're not unnecessarily difficult, she said you will always work. And that's what I would tell anyone, trying to get into either DJing or a band. Be competent at what you do, show up on time, don't be unnecessarily difficult. In terms of collecting music, I know a lot of DJs hate it when people ask them, what they're playing, but I've found I would always ask people what they're playing, and they would always tell me. And I think it's just, you got to come at it the right way. It's got to be a genuine thing. You got to, if you really love what you're hearing and you want to know, then, just be respectful and, just ask. And then, keep a list. And, when you're out there digging, just take your list with you. And, I think at this point in the 21st century, digging, it's kind of like, it can be virtual as well. You can be online looking up stuff on Discogs or eBay, but, just make lists and, and think about what if you're collecting to DJ, think about, kind of what you're hearing and what you're responding to and what you're hearing. Because I over the years I've noticed I do kind of have a sound. There's I've noticed like lots of congas and percussion. I love stuff like that, and so I'm always checking for that. And that would be my advice. Kind of hone in on what your sound is, and when you don't be afraid to ask people, but be respectful when you do ask them.
Yeah, there is a fine line in that world. So, is there anyone that you haven't worked with, or a place you haven't played yet, that's a bucket list item for you? Something you want to do?
Oh man, DJ wise, I mean, it'd be amazing. I mean, year before last, 2019, I did, technically DJ the Hollywood Bowl, but it was like, they have like a little courtyard area before you go into the main bowl. And that was when Nile Rodgers played. So I guess like a bucket list place would definitely be like the main stage at the Hollywood Bowl or something like that. That would be, that's definitely a bucket list. I think I could die happy if I could, as a band or as a DJ, be on that stage.
I mean, I think all things are possible for sure. You're definitely like in the upper echelons of DJing and rubbing shoulders, and the networks and circles that you travel in. You realize they get smaller as you continue up the rings of the ladder. So that's cool. I mean, I'd love to see you at the Hollywood Bowl. I'd love to see more funk nights and that type of music at the Hollywood Bowl for sure. I think I did see Chad Boseman, rest in peace, when the James Brown biopic came out. I saw him with Christian McBride and I don't know, D'Angelo and some other people. I think Angelique Kiddo, and they did some funk and world stuff, and it was cool. But definitely much more could be done in such a huge 17,000 piece people. I just was there with her and the LA Symphony or the LA Philharmonic, and it was epic. And I'll be back there for Brittany Howard. I think there's no concert there they do that isn't good. And oh my gosh, I saw Herbie a few years ago, and I think he's over 80 now, but he was like 79 then, and like he runs out on stage. And runs out with his guitar on. And I was like, I want to have that much energy at 80.
At age.
Yeah, exactly. So what's next for you? What's next for you in your career? What's next for you terms of what you're doing?
Well, I got a lot of things coming up. This is Wednesday. So yeah, tomorrow night at the Highland Park Bowl, one of the bands I play with is a garage rock band called the Violet Minefield. We're playing the Highland Park Bowl. That's tomorrow. I believe we're on at 9. And then Friday night, I am DJing the Airliner. There's a promotion company called Hello Stranger that, they just did like a really big event over at Santa Anita Race Park called Hit the Switches, where they have like all types of funk and soul, from like Dame Funk to like the Breakestra to I think like the Altons and a lot of the Penrose recordings artists. So yeah, Hello Stranger's putting on an event at the Airliner where it's going to be members of like Los Yesterdays. But I'm DJing with Ruben Molina, and they're going to do there's going to be kind of like a, they call it new wop band, kind of, more doo-wop influenced soul. That's going to be at the Airliner on the 3rd. Then at the end of the month, I have like a new party that I started called the Soul Shakedown Party. It's going to be September 25th at Zebulon. So that's on the horizon right now.
Nice, man. You got a lot of things coming down the pipeline. Great to see.
Yeah.
Live music and things like that.
I'm sorry. Yeah, then my own band. I have another, my main project musically, the Mercury Wheel. We're playing September 19th in Pasadena at a place called The Mix. So, and I'll be DJing that as well.
Nice. Well, a double header of you.
Yeah. I'm staying busy.
And where can people find you?
I have a website, cliftonweaver.com. And then my band, The Mercury Wheel, also has a site, themercurywheel.com. And so we'll have I list my shows and stuff on my site, and the band, we list our shows on our site, and there's some like recordings and everything there. And
awesome. Well, we're
and then Instagram and Twitter, Clifton1775 at Instagram and Twitter, and Clifton Weaver on Facebook.
Okay. Social media, website. I'm sure the website, cliftonweaver.com, has links to those, as well as your band site, so people can funnel through there. But super stoked to be able to have you on the at-home interviews and be able to talk to you about your illustrious career and and so many cool things that you've done and so many cool things you're going to continue to do. It sounds like as we get out of the pandemic into other stuff, I think it's going to be a much brighter 2022 for everyone. Fingers crossed. So, I look forward to hearing more music from you. Hopefully I'll be able to also come out and check you out live at a show sometime soon. So I'll get on the website and look at the calendar as well. And we'll get this up on the website and out onto the airwaves so people can learn more about you and what you're doing. And we look forward to catching up with you in the future and doing a follow-up.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Take care. You too. Thank you.
88.5 FM, KCSN, and KCSN HD1 Northridge, Los Angeles. KSBR and KSBR HD1 Mission Viejo. A service of California State University Northridge and Saddleback College. Member-supported public radio. Streaming on the web at 885fm.org.